Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Meta Talks by MetaGate Summit. My name is Salman Halewi. I am the Innovation Strategy Manager at MetaGate. And this initiative was created in order to educate our community on the world that is Web3 and the Metaverse, and on how this world is taking us into the digital era, and how that digital era is going to impact our lives and businesses on a day-to-day basis. Every few weeks, we host a guest from somewhere around the globe who is an expert in their specific field. And this episode is no different. Today, we have Christian Reza, who is the Director of Marketing at Novus, a next-gen blockchain data provider. Christian, thank you for being here. Would you just go ahead and give our audience a small introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Salman. I appreciate it. Great to be here with you on this talk too. I love what MetaGate is doing. I think this makes a lot of sense. Meta Talks, the whole premise of the podcast. It's a really important conversation to have. A little intro about myself. So I'm traditional marketing background, marketing agencies. Worked for a bunch of big brands and small startups over the years. Ford, Meta, Chrysler, Binance, smaller companies like decentralized web tech, and where I'm at now with Novus. So I've touched the span across each of the different size companies and different goals. I got into the Web3 space in 2020, started really just freelancing, working with DAOs and other NFT projects, and really just small scale stuff until moving full time earlier this year. And it's been a journey, but that's where I'm at now.
All right, beautiful. Thank you again for being here. Now, I think everyone within the space and a lot of people working in marketing right now are asking themselves the same question. What will marketing look like in the era of Web3, and specifically now with the rise of a new technology of the Metaverse?
Yeah, that's a great question. In order to really look at the span of marketing as a whole, you have to go back to what it used to be and now what it is. We know that branding and advertising was something done so that you could track the quality of a product. That's really the origins of marketing and branding, and however you want to really categorize it. And it's really changed over the years. Today, we're in the era of digital marketing, pay-per-click advertising, mobile advertising, display and social media, content, video, so many incredible mediums where we can create consumer experiences and market to our audience and really just garnish that attention, drive consideration, and then ultimately drive purchases. With technology, it's always shifted. And of course, nowadays with blockchain and Web3, NFTs, the Metaverse, we've seen that shift drastically, and it's going to be a much faster shift than it was from radio, newspaper, TV to digital, and going now from digital to Metaverse, Web3. That shift is going to come so much quicker. And today, with the Metaverse, obviously, there have been some incredible case studies done already, but whether we like it or not, it's the future, and it's coming for all of us. And we can dive into more specifics either way, but it's really important if you're a marketer to understand this technology and not get left behind, frankly.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there is a train that's either going to pass on you, and you're going to have to be running after it or waiting for the next train. Or you're just going to catch up, get a ticket, and get on the train, understand all the strategies that you need, and really become one of the pioneers
Yeah.
in the space because
Well,
you've got millions of famous marketers in the Web 1 and Web 2 era, but we still don't have, I think, thousands of famous marketers in Web 3. And that's a huge opportunity.
yeah, it really is. And it's funny that you kind of brought this whole train ideas, because when I was looking at this from the outside, I was at an agency in 2020 and looking at the space and had gotten introduced to crypto and blockchain. And I was just looking at it as an outsider. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't really, whatever. Paid no mind to it, didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And then I heard some use case about a brand, I think maybe it was Coke,
Yeah.
who had created this suite of NFTs or something like that, some
Yeah.
projects. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I was like, oh, weird. That's kind of a, and then I saw something with it was like it might have been Bored Ape or something like that. And it had blown up and it got some news coverage. Adidas did some sort of, activation with them. And I think it was the early one that they did. And I was like blown away. And I was like, as a marketer, this is a technology that people are using to create fandom. And I know zero about it. I was like, dude, no, hell, like this is crazy. Like it drove me crazy. And so if I think as a marketer, you have to be naturally curious too, because otherwise that train is going to pass. Like, and you're going to be left behind, 3 years behind, 4 years behind, and know nothing about it, know zero.
Yeah.
And it's going to become the future. It's the same with the metaverse. Same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of all of these use cases and real life applications, because that's really what we at Metagate try to target and give to our audience. What do you think some of the real life use cases and applications are going to be in the future, and what is currently being used by brands to drive value?
Well, let's talk about today, and then we can talk about tomorrow afterwards. So today, some of the successful use cases, a lot of this we'll see, I'll give you some like really popular examples, which is like Fortnite. More common, people know Fortnite, it's well known. You can consider it a game, you can also consider it a metaverse platform or just a metaverse. um, and there are others. There's Decentraland, and they've done some great activations in there. There's Sandbox, there's been some good partnerships and activations there. You've seen Gucci and McDonald's and all of these other brands go in and create native brand experiences. And what I mean is they've gone in, they've set up shop, and they've said, hey, here's a place where you can enter in via virtual reality. And we can talk about augmented reality too. But like they've gone in virtual reality and they can sort of experience the brand, kind of like if they were going to a showroom or some sort of party or event that is natively that brand, and you get to be immersed in that experience, whether it's decorations on the wall, the floor, the chandeliers, the shape of the art on the wall. Like all of the things are suggestive to the brand. So they might all just be shaped like the McDonald's M, for example. Like, and we've seen some of these activations. We've seen great brand experiences. We've seen creators like Ariana Grande, who did a concert in the metaverse. There have been advertising, very simple advertising campaigns where it's just billboards or sponsored activations for games or events or whatever it may be. So there's very low level barrier to entry, and then there's like higher barrier to entry, which is like create an experience. And so there's so many ways to get in, and it's really not a high barrier to entry to go in and play around and start testing. It's very easy to do. And so we've seen that. Gucci's done that. And they did a great job. McDonald's had a great activation. Ariana Grande, like I'd mentioned, numerous Fortnite activations with partnerships. Nike has gone in and done partnerships. And they're very, very simple, but very effective. They reach a new audience that is typically harder to reach. And yeah, there's just some great examples in there. When it comes to the future, like I mentioned, right now, we've kind of only seen a couple of different ways to market in the metaverse, which is like sponsorship or billboard advertise, or like sort of create an event or create
Yeah.
Physical virtual location where people can go in and have this sort of experience so far. In the future, we're going to get much more depth experiences where the cameras are much better. So visually, I can see you and I are almost like we're in the same room. So it's going to get much more effective when it comes to the actual real world look and feel. Also, you know, there was a brand that I worked with previously where one of the things they really wanted to do was a bike race in the metaverse. And we're unfortunately limited by the technology of the year, which is it's a high cost to have their customers go in and get a virtual reality helmet. It's a high cost to, and really doesn't exist right now, to hook up a Peloton or other bike that is connected to the internet to be able to track speed and be able to track how fast someone is going in order to have this virtual race. But the interest is there. Their community is interested. They want to do some fun things like that. They want to be able to meet people from all over the world and come to one central location, whether I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, or in Saudi Arabia. The interest is there, but the technology is holding them back a little bit. And I think we're only, 5 or less years away. But the interest is there to have more immersive experiences that, span countries and continents.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. And I feel like what we will reach when we have full-fledged XR and MR is groundbreaking because it allows us to achieve a lot in terms of activations, in terms of experiences, and all of that. But what we do have today, and I feel like it is the closer route towards mass adoption that doesn't require us to go too digital for the people who are still hesitant, is AR. I mean, every one of us can just reach out, grab their phone right now, and open up whatever activation, whatever application that opens up an activation for them, and they're in the experience. Yes, they're not 100% immersed, but they get to experience it. So don't you feel like AR is something that should be focused on, as opposed to the technologically limited MR and XR devices, or maybe even the VR devices that have a very high barrier to entry in terms of purchasing power? We're not used to buying them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's certainly the case. And you're right. It's a little harder for us to, just as a consumer, and most consumers are the same, where we have this viewpoint of, oh man, I got to purchase something extra in order to use it. Well, now I deem it a luxury, and a luxury is something that I don't necessarily need. And it really limits the target market that you can really go after. And so, yes, that makes sense. We'll eventually get there, but as of today, it's still considered a luxury. And yeah, right now I've got a phone and I can go in and use AR on multiple different applications, in multiple different formats. I remember back in the day when I had a PDF scanner that essentially used AR to augment this document and now put it into a PDF format for me that I took off my desk. And that was like, man, that was like 10 years ago. But now it's gotten so advanced with the technology that, when we look at one of the greatest one of the greatest case studies, rather, which is Pokemon Go, and the fandom that's already there behind Pokemon, it's a nostalgic sort of fandom that when they launched this application and, hey, guess what? There's a Pokemon down the road over there, and I get pinged, and now I know about it, or I could chat friends. They let me know where it was, and I could point the camera outside and start to see it virtually. It's an incredible way to drive fandom and brand experience. And you can obviously have to get very creative with this, but you can do this in B2C. You can do this in B2B. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but you have to get creative around how you go and you activate it. It could be something as simple as couponing, and we've seen that with a lot of food brands. It's effective. It gets used. And again, it's a way to create a unique experience that not a lot of other people are going to be doing. And so it makes you unique in turn.
Indeed. And we were actually having a small discussion before this episode, you and I, about how marketing is transitioning in the digital era to go from something that is, just out there and you're paying for, to a form of marketing that is more specific to a specific niche of people and a specific audience. And we were talking about how attention nowadays is so scarce that you have to find the right person with the right post, with the right type of content to actually get to engage with them and get to take a bit of that attention. If I may say that.
Yeah.
Uh, we were talking about how brands are gonna sort of revolutionize the way they work, from working on just, going in, putting their ads out there, to tailor making content for their people.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to today's digital marketing, we're like really close to that aspect of one marketing, which is the marketer's dream. Like the ideal is that I can talk directly to one person and
Yeah.
hyper personalization, and I can get, and it's getting more difficult because, and we'll get into this later with sort of data privacy and that sort of thing. But it's getting harder because now I don't, as a marketer or a brand, I don't have the ability to pull all of that information to get so minutely specific on that one person that I can do one-of-one marketing, right? With digital marketing, we have retargeting ads and we have different things that make it a little easier and you can sort of get to that person. But yeah, we're going to see this rapid shift over the next few years, which is like brands are going to have to market in a way that they are making themselves a category of one. And the famous example that we had previously talked about was Liquid Death, where it's like you look at the water industry and there's Aquafina and there's Crystal Geyser and there's like whatever else. There's a lot of brands, Dasani. They all sort of mesh together, and generally, unless you're kind of leaning on taste a little bit, and it's not by much, like you're really looking at this and you're thinking, I'm just going to buy whichever one is cheapest off the shelf or whatever. I don't really care that much. But what Liquid Death has done has positioned themselves in a way that they're so vastly different from everyone else, so radical on one side or the other, that you either love them or you just absolutely despise them. And that is exactly what they want, because when people are just kind of meh about your product, like they're indifferent, then you're not going to gather fandom from either side. And it's going to be harder and harder as competition continues to grow over the years. It's getting much easier to start a business because of the internet. It's very easy to spin up a website. It's very easy to spin up a product or software or whatever. And now AI is helping all of this. And so like it's getting easier to do these things. So there's going to be much more competition. And so in turn, what brands and companies need to do is become more of a category of one, something where there's really nobody else in your sector and you're so hyper specific to one niche and one audience that they are your loyal fans. And they're such fierce fans that you don't even fall into the same categories anymore as the Aquafinas of the world. You're just so vastly different and unique. So that's the direction that we're going. It's going that direction, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, indeed. It's a lot about the us and them sort of complex. The What Seth Godin likes to talk about a lot. The people like us do things like this sort of complex, where people feel like they belong to the brand, like the brand speaks for them.
Yes.
I think one of the first brands to do this immaculately was Apple. I mean, it was them against the status quo. It created that us against the status quo type of complex, where people really felt like there was something they were part of. They were part of something bigger, and that's a part of the importance that people like to feel when they are part of your brand and part of your brand experience, and something that needs to start being taken into account when you do your brand positioning. Uh, as a company today.
Definitely. 100%.
So yeah, and marketing today is a lot about data, right? It's data driven. It's driven by metrics, by KPIs. It's mostly what you can measure and who you can target and how much it's going to cost you to target that person. That in a lot of ways it has lost its essence of catering to people, right? It's more now of catering to X person who falls in X category who happens to like X thing. Uh, Now with Web3, I feel like there is going to be a very big shift um, in the way we market to people, and especially with a very important aspect of Web3, and that is data privacy and data ownership. If and when we do reach a world where data privacy and data ownership are a thing, how are companies going to pivot the way they market without all the metrics and the data available in today's version of the web? What do you think about that?
One of the things that brands are really going to have to consider, and some of them get it. Some of them, startups, new companies, are typically understanding this a little bit better. Media companies definitely get this, is that marketing is best served when the people tell you what they want to hear about, what they want to learn about, what they want to be served. And a classic example of this is when you sign up for a newsletter, for example. A lot of times nowadays, when you sign up for a newsletter, it'll also give you some categories, and it'll say, hey, which ones do you want to get? Do you want to hear about our weekly updates? Do you want to just hear about products? Do you just want to be informed when a new special drops, or whatever it is, right? And so the reason that's so valuable as a brand and as a marketer is that you look at that and you're like, great, you are telling me exactly what you want to be served when it comes to advertising. I'm going to hit you with an email newsletter specific to what you select, and it's automatically going to be done. So that's all good. That exists today, but it's not quite as granular as it could be, right? And so what's going to happen is this shift in ownership of data through blockchain technology and Web3, where and some products exist on the market right now. Some platforms already exist where I, as the consumer, can enter into a smart contract, a contract with the brand, and say, hey, brand, I'm willing to give you my name, I'm willing to give you my location, I'm willing to give you my demographics, I'm willing to give you all of these interests, but you know what? I'm not willing to give you information about what I hold in my wallets, or I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, I can provide certain bits of information and withhold certain bits of information. And the brand might say, okay, great, you've met the requirements for this certain threshold of, we're going to provide you with some sort of unique rewards for people who are willing to give us X, Y, and Z, right? Information about themselves. And so we're entering into this new era of data and data privacy and marketing, where it's going to be so permissioned that if you're not doing this as a brand and you're not offering something of real value, nobody's going to want to provide permission for their data. And so now you've got to come to the table as a brand with even more value than you ever have before, in order to get the information that you want. And in turn, it's this sort of synonymous relationship of, I work with you, you work with me, and it's very, very commingled and meshed. And at any time, any point in time, the brand or the user, consumer, can sever that smart contract via blockchain technology and just say, hey, I'm done, I don't want to provide this information anymore. And they can immediately do it, and immediately those effects take place. And you can do it at scale with blockchain. So it's very scalable for that. Yeah, it's fascinating that we're moving into this era. A lot of brands don't really realize it's coming, and they really need to get educated on it now, because it's happening for sure.
All right, beautiful. What we will have to hope for, of course, Christian, is that governments adopt policy where data privacy and data ownership is a thing, and not a lot of lobbying goes against data privacy and data ownership. Not in a sense that it's not a thing that people, that is mandatory, but more in a sense of, you don't need it. We've been taking your data for all these years. What happened, right? So I feel like at some point the builders are going to have to sit down with the governments and just find a way to regulate whatever should be regulated, because we don't want to compromise a lot on our side as builders. And governments really need to tell us what they really need, right? Besides what the big data companies need as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, let's hope for the best.
Yeah, we can hope for the best. I mean, and yeah, when it comes to, our data and stuff, it's like, man, with healthcare, I can manage all my healthcare records, right?
Yeah.
Like, can I do that myself? Like, do I really need to, can I have a digital ID that I just carry with me on my phone? It's always connect. Like, there are certain things that it's like, man, I really want to be able to do, and I don't really need an intermediary to do that for me. I can offer that if I choose to, if I'm like, you know what, you manage it, no big deal. But I
Yeah.
should be able to have the option to do that. And I think the governments and companies they're going to have to work together, because these companies are coming to disrupt everything. This is happening whether the governments like it or not. And so um, yeah, everyone needs to get on board, frankly.
And this is a call for everyone to get on board, I guess.
It is.
Let's hope for the best. I don't know how much control we still have, but we are still in the early phase of Web3, and we are still capable of creating the Web3 that we want, unlike what we had with Web1 and Web2, where we really didn't understand the technology enough to step in.
Right.
Now, Christian, to wrap things up, MetaGate Summit is going to be a 3-day hybrid summit set to take place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in 2024, bringing together companies and top executives from all over the world to discuss the true value of the metaverse for businesses moving forward. How important do you think events like MetaGate are for companies to be part of? And what are your expectations for this year's event?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I love what Metagate is doing. I'm excited for the event personally. It's essential. I've been saying it throughout the podcast, and we've been talking about it throughout the podcast, which is like, really, really just have to get on board and start to even just educate yourself. And in 2020, when I was outside looking in, it was very much like, didn't have much of a care in the beginning, but then when I realized people were using it in different ways to create fandom and to drive revenue, I was like, what on earth am I doing? How could I not know anything about this industry? I have to know. And so you really have to get educated. And I think Metagate is a great opportunity to get educated. And I'm excited because, I think that you guys are building quite a good and diverse group of panelists and speakers and things like that to go in and touch on these areas. So if you just want to come as a visitor, a guest, and just get educated, you can. Or if you want to participate, you can. I think there's opportunities across the spectrum for any of the companies that want to get involved. And I will say, just to kind of smooth over the top here, is this example that I really love to share of Kellogg and Post back in the United States and in the early days of the Depression. When the Depression occurred and everything was down and everybody was in dire circumstances when it came to business, Post pulled back on their marketing and their advertising and their sort of use of technology and spending in this area. And Kellogg's was like, okay, great. Well, Post is pulling back. We're going to increase. We're going to go further. We're going to get in deeper. And what they did effectively at that time was was really position themselves as the market leader from that period up until present day. And present day, they still have held that lead over 100 years now. They've held the same lead that they achieved back in the Depression era to today. So something that seems maybe like I can put it off for a couple of years and whatever, that may be fine, but your competitor or some competitor somewhere is being built to position themselves as the market leader, and they may, given the head start, remain as that market leader for the next 100 years, which is really the direction we're going with the metaverse. And so that's why events like MetaGate are so important. I'm really looking forward to hearing about some of the speakers and particularly what companies and what products are being built in
Yeah,
in this
indeed. Thank you for this insightful talk, for your time, Christian. And we most definitely look forward to having you and Novus at MetaGate Summit this year. And thank you to everybody for watching this episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed recording it for you. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on our social media accounts. Thank you for watching and have a great day.